I think the reason people have trouble with Fast and Furious with understanding it is because it's like this strange patchwork of this happened over here and that happened over there. And I think it's really difficult to piece the whole thing together. First of all, because we're not psychopaths. We don't think the way these kind of people think. So it's difficult, I think, for most Americans to figure out, like, okay, so why would they even want to send weapons to the Middle East? Like, you know, because we don't think that way. They're our enemies. Normal people just don't think in terms of the kind of goals that they had.
Yeah, and they think in terms of narrative control from the media and what can disrupt their control of the narrative. And two guys that, and more, you know, there's more than just you guys, but, you know, two guys that can find their way to the news outlets and tell an on-the-ground story that they don't want people to hear. Well, they've got to figure out a way to stop that.
Brian, since you're a cowboy, if you want to go next and just do a quick intro of yourself.
Yeah, my name is Brian Connell, and so I guess my story was I was not a federal firearms licensed dealer. I was buying and selling many guns under what's they call now the gun show loophole. And so what happened was I was in Odessa, Texas. Like I said, we worked with Vicky. I had seen Ian several times, and I saw him go down. I actually showed up to his courtroom several times while this was all going on. The whole time I was scratching my head, thinking, how can this happen? And then I was actually advised even by my dad. He said, you know, just be careful with what you're doing. You don't want to end up like Ian. And I said, no, I'm not doing anything wrong. And so about 6 months later, I was actually taken down by the ATF. And what was incredible was the original charge that I had, the grand jury could not indict for, it was just smuggling goods from the United States. They had absolutely no evidence on me that I'd ever moved a gun out of the country. And then the prosecutor was so upset that he didn't get a bench warrant by the grand jury for me smuggling goods, that he actually went back, waited until a new grand jury convened, and then he changed my charge to conspiracy to smuggle goods. And my attorney said nobody can beat a conspiracy, and that's the God's honest truth. So once I had that charge on me, they trumped up a bunch of bogus charges. It was myself and my friend Angel were both buying and selling weapons, and so they made that into a criminal act, and they said that through all the blackmail, they threatened me with going to world court. They threatened me, going for Interpol violations for moving these guns into Mexico, which I never did. The guns that were in my case, they were actually found on the north side of the border in a abandoned truck, and so they never even crossed into Mexico. The only gun that they found that was traced back to me that was in this lot of guns, of firearms, was a gun with a serial number that I had purchased. So they traced it back to me, and they said, well, you're obviously guilty because all these guns are yours, and you're obliterating serial numbers too. And I said, I've never obliterated a serial number in my life. And that's the God's honest truth. And so one thing led to another, and the prosecutors did not let up at all. I agreed to cooperate with them with the investigation. And then when I went to court, they said, I was an animal, a menace to society. I needed to go to prison for 11 years, 9 months. And The judge was the first one that said, I can't sentence this man more than 5 years. And so I got maxed out at 5 years and probation and everything. So, and they just really took advantage of it. So.
But you live to tell the story.
I'll go. I'm Don, and I'm with Cindy, and a lot of the deep level conspiracy stuff, I was actually aware of some of the deep state stuff before it was called the deep state, back in the mid 80s and 90s, and some of the early Patriot stuff I knew about online because I'm kind of a natural researcher, and I read some books that told me all this stuff was true, and they were really heavily footnoted, and I knew what was going on, and that there were these shadowy figures that were behind a lot of the corruptions in the nations, and but then I had a personal experience of being married to somebody who knew some of the same stuff, but she was really unhealed, and because of the brokenness of her background, her dad was in Air America, that was Vietnam and the heroin traffic there. So, I mean, that's the Mel Gibson movie, but that was the fictional account of what her background. And so that marriage broke apart, but in the process, I learned that this whole thing that's going on behind the scenes breaks people, and sometimes they don't get healed. And so I just set up myself to understand the psychological dynamics, and then I married Cindy shortly after my relationship with the other woman ended, because I knew just that God had somebody special for me. But she didn't know, this stuff like I did, and we just kind of were, happily non-involved in any of it until the banker bailout. And when that happened, I knew exactly what was going on, because the financial aspect of it was sort of the entry door for me, not personally, but I had just studied this stuff and I understood it. And so when that happened, and she and I woke up together and we started learning about things about 9/11 and a bunch of other stuff together. And I always knew that I was living in a time when there was going to be these incredible changes, and now we're living through it. And the most amazing thing to me is to see people, my family included, some of them that just are resisting waking up. They're resisting seeing it. They just believe what the news media tells them, and that's one of the most frustrating things to me. But I've kind of learned to live with it, and I'm really glad to be able to talk to guys like you and to be able to help get the word out about the truth about what's really happening, so that people don't go into this blind.
Ian, you want to give a little intro of yourself?
I'm Ian Garland. I'm a U.S. citizen born in Australia. I've been here in the United States for something like 30 years now. I've traveled all around the world. I've served in the Australian Army. I served here at Fort Bliss as Op 4 back during the deployments. And now I'm a Chief Warrant Officer in the 1st Texas Medical Battalion in the Airborne Section. I run that since I'm a highly qualified airborne instructor with something like 600 jumps, and I've jumped everything there is out there in the last 20, 30 years. And I lived in Chaparral, New Mexico, right by El Paso, which is right by Juarez. And my Fast and Furious was directly connected to the Arizona Fast and Furious. And what happened with me, they indicted me, kept me quiet, put me in solitary for 450 days, denied me an attorney, denied me a trial, denied me a speedy 75-day trial. And I was in the utmost horrible conditions, in filth, in human waste, frozen beyond belief, where I couldn't move. I lost toenails, sitting in human waste, using my underwear as toilet paper. You have no idea the treatment I was given.
You're another survivor. I think all of us have tremendous respect for you, just the fact that you survived that ordeal. Pretty wild. Ken, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, it sounds like I've had a charmed existence. The background on me, I'm third generation military. I didn't go into the military, but I sort of grew up around talk about politics, and my grandfather was in World War I, worked for the Rockefellers, and helped open up the oil market in Venezuela. And I still have his letters and everything. So I kind of, I was always interested, but never really dedicated. I'm colorblind. I couldn't get into the Navy to be a pilot, which is what I really wanted to do. But about the same time as Don was alluding to the banker bailout, I actually happened to be in the Air Force Academy building, or the complex there, when my son was touring. So it was locked down, and we watched the whole thing from closed circuit there. And so it's always been an interest. I worked in the Ron Paul campaign in 2012 in New Hampshire in the headquarters, just as an aide, and to watch the kids that were working there. And that was where I got the political bug. And from there, it just was sort of a process of independent media and getting more and more interested in some of these stories. I didn't focus on this one as much, and I'll probably be in the background mostly listening. But I'm knowledgeable on counterintelligence, psychological influencing, things like that. So I've always been attracted to that, the psychological profiles behind the players, their strategic mindset, and trying to look beyond the event horizon at what will this adversary do next. And we're facing that now. I think it's been a fascinating and interesting few years, culminating in the little riot that we had that happened about 3 miles away, and then the lady who was beaten at her business doorstep was about 2 miles away. The group was moving toward our town, and then they went around and arced through the city, and then came in to the other end of our town. This is the Antifa group. And so I'm still a little shook up. I'm upping the arsenal here, and I may, after we get through with the show, ask you a couple questions on small arms, if it's not a touchy subject at this point. But it's it's
the best, unfortunately.
Yeah, I like the military grade. But anyway, we'll talk about that later. So I want to listen. I really am interested in. If possible, I understand what happened, and your stories are completely believable, credible. I've listened to a few of the other interviews, and we may not get to that point where we can figure this out, but I'm still trying to picture why they were doing this. And if the people that were surrounding you, the guards and so on, what was their level of awareness? Did they somehow believe the fake news version, or these are things that we can unfold as we roll forward?
Well, the guards, when I was in Ector County detention in Odessa, they started calling me Tier 1, which goes back to highly trained, high speed, low drag individual, highly disciplined individual. So there was preferential treatment of me the entire time I was locked up, because especially the Bureau of Prison guards, they all said, "You went to jail for doing what I do every weekend, buying and selling guns?" Yes. Wow. So you're telling me I could go to jail for that? Yes. Wow. So right away, just them reading my file, and obviously I had law enforcement experience, and that's why they shipped me to a special yard in Elkton, Ohio, thousands of miles away from home. So their heart really went out to me, and I did see at a lot of points in time. I did experience the diesel therapy, which is where they truck you around the country. I did experience solitary confinement, not for as many days as Ian did, but I was in solitary lockdown 24 hours a day. This 23-and-1 BS that they talk about, not in Texas. Okay, so 4.5 months, 24 hours lockdown. I hadn't seen the stars or the moon in 10 months. And I made that known to a guard, and then the guard pulled me out of a cell and said he needed me to clean the rec area at Odessa at Ector County Correctional Center. So he let me go up to the rec center, which we had never seen. Didn't even know that they had a rec center because they never gave us rec. He said, I need you to clean this all at probably about 10 o'clock at night. He pulled me out of his cell. So I went up there and cleaned it just so I could see the stars. Didn't see the sun for 10 months, living under UV lights. Came out needing glasses, just from all of that, because your eyes just get trashed. So it's incredible what Ian and I have been through, but psychologically, I know Cindy, spoke very highly about you. It's this you can't break what's unbreakable mentality that I believe Ian and I both possessed, and ultimately we're upset, but we're not going to go out and loot and burn buildings about it. We're trying to do it the right way.
When you both did the red pill interview, one thing that really stood out to me was that one of you, I think it might have been you, Brian, said that had you not had Special Forces training, you don't think that you would have been able to survive your ordeal. And Ian, you kind of agreed with them on that. Can you both just kind of comment on that?
Yes, I mean, Brian mentioned earlier about talking about Special Forces training. When I was overseas, and what the training we had was, it was pretty interesting, because one of the things I always fall back on was speaking to one of the Apollo 13 astronauts. And I asked him, when everything was going wrong, did you feel like jumping up and down and screaming and kicking? And I said, yeah, sure, we could have done that. And 10 minutes later, where would we be? Right back here in the same situation. So you sit down, cool, calm, collective, think about it, think of what's going to happen in the future, that one day this is going to end, and this is going to be one hell of a story.
Yeah, you just really just endure it. And there was got locked up when I was 28 years old, and 6'5", 260 pounds. I was one of the bigger guys out, in the prison. And that's where my nickname Cowboy came from, because I didn't need to be a part of a clique. I didn't need to be in a gang for protection. If somebody had an issue with me, well, let's put your knuckles up. And so one of the reasons why I was in solitary was because I beat a guy's face in, because I was going to be assaulted. So I put him in ICU, and the guards were walking by taunting, saying, if he dies, that's murder. You're going away for life. So I'm on my hands and knees praying that this kid doesn't die, that I beat up. I never started a fight. I defended myself though. And that's pretty much how the nickname Cowboy came about, and everything was because they knew not to mess with this big Texan, so definitely endure it and grin and bear it, just grit your teeth. That's how I was raised,
I moved from California to Chaparral, New Mexico, which is right by Fort Bliss and El Paso, of course, which is right by Juarez, Mexico. And from my door in Mexico to the door in Mexico would be about 19 minutes to go shopping. And I got my FFL and started doing gun shows and sales and all that. And then suddenly my business just boomed like you would not believe. And that was due to the fact I had a lot of ICE, DEA, Border Patrol agents, police, who would get off at weird hours in the morning and at nighttime when regular business hour shops were closed. And Nick's Background Check Center is open pretty much 24 hours a day. So I could run the background check at 6 a.m. in the morning or 12 o'clock at night. And I did transfers like you wouldn't believe. and it was great, and everybody was happy. And then, of course, there's the private collector, they call it, gun shows that sells, a table full of 300 guns. I thought that's kind of weird because they're selling to anyone, minors, ex-felons, whatever, with no background check. But when I complained, ATF said that's totally legally, so, it is what it is. And then they said, people can buy from your shop, walk out the gate, and do a private sale. And to me, that's kind of weird. Well, the firearm's gone off the books forever. It goes from one to the next one to the next one to the next one. It would be untraceable. It would come back with me selling it to, say, John Smith, and John Smith would say, yeah, I sold it private at a gun show. No paperwork, no tax, no record. But like I said, it is what it is, and that's apparently totally legally. So I don't understand. If my guys were doing that, what was the problem? But the problem was the mayor, the police chief, the trustee was smuggling these firearms to Mexico from day one. And I warned them when they started buying. Every time they bought from me, they did the paperwork. They passed the background check. And when you buy more than one, you have to notify for a multiple purchase form. And I notified the sheriff, the ATF, and the FBI. No one did anything except, no, there's no problem, sell more. And I warned my customers, the police officer, the mayor, and all that. I said, if these turn up in crimes or Mexico, they'll be traced back and there'll be problems. Oh, no, these are for our families. We buy, sell, collect. I'm like, well, that's legal. I went over that with the ATF already. So they assured me twice, these are for us. But these firearms, not just mine, Arizona, mine, everywhere, Oklahoma was turning up in background checks. And it was proven in the congressional report that the background checks were being hidden and delayed. Not background checks, sorry. The trace information was purposely being hid in Arizona so that Operation Fast and Furious could go on. And of course, the agents did complain, especially Special Agent John Dodson, and they were told, well, if you don't like it, go be a correction officer for $10 an hour. So they did what they were told. And finally, when Brian Terry was murdered by one of the guns that was bought by Jamie Avila that the ATF let go, John Dodson had enough. He said, no, that's it. And he tried to say something about it, and they almost hung the guy and threw him in jail to keep him quiet. But I think it was NBC, Cheryl Atkinson at the time. She broke the story, and it turned, of course, into a congressional hearing, and we all know what happened. They admitted they were sending guns to Mexico, and they estimate 2,000. Believe me, try about 15,000 to get correct, because all the private sales that were going over there, I mean, it was like a conveyor belt from the U.S. to Mexico. And it was not only firearms, it was ammunition, it was bulletproof vests, it was lasers, scopes, it was night vision goggles from Fort Bliss, which I complained about. Soldiers were selling them. And I tried to tell the ATF, and they couldn't care less. They just didn't want to know about it. So that's what happened. Next minute, I'm indicted to keep me quiet, thrown in solitary for 450 days. And the thing was, I actually ran into the police chief and the mayor while I was in jail by accident, even though they tried to keep us separate. And the first thing they said to me was, hey, we're sorry, man. We told them you had nothing to do with us. We're just buying from you like we're buying from everywhere else. So is that exculpatory evidence that the prosecutor had that he hid to keep me in jail? So there you go. I mean, think of this. If I was going to do something illegally, why would I make the paper trail leading back to me? I mean, does it say stupid on my forehead somewhere? Because I'm looking in the mirror right now and I don't see it. So I don't understand that, I mean, and they said, you should have known. Well, I should have known what? I did the background check. That's up to you guys to be my backup. I told you, police chief, mayor, Eddie Espinoza, social security number, blah, blah, blah. 3 firearms, deny, pass, or delay. Nope, pass. He's fine. Okay, so you told me to pass. What else do you want me to do? Should I ask you, did he have breakfast this morning? You got a full tank of gas? Did the kids make it to school? Do you have clean underwear? My job ends. They didn't tell me they're going to do anything illegal. If they were going to do anything illegal, like a couple of my customers, I went to the police and I went to the ATF, which is another story, which was absolutely useless because I might as well be talking to a brick wall. But it's like if I sell you a car and you go and rob a bank and in fleeing, you run down and kill a police officer, is that my fault? If you tell me you're going to buy a car, rob a bank, and kill anybody who gets in your way, I ain't going to sell you the car, and I'm going to call the police, which I did several times during my FFL licensing in El Paso and Chaparral there, but to no avail. When I sold these firearms to the police chief and the mayor, and they started buying multiples, I told them I have to notify the ATF, the local sheriff, of the multiple purchases, and I said, what do you want 10 firearms for? And they said, well, for our families, for protection on the border. I'm like, well, I see that, yeah, of course. And they said, these won't turn up in crimes or Mexico because I said they will be traced. And they assured me twice, and after 6 months, I had received not one trace request from the ATF about any firearms. So I'm feeling pretty good about these guys, especially, being a police chief and a mayor. I mean, if they were going to do something illegal with these firearms, they would be traced. And of course, they would know that, being police officers. And there was never a trace request at all. But of course, the trace information was coming in from all over the southern states to the Arizona office. And that was proven in the congressional hearing on page 15. They had the trace information and they were hiding it so the operation could continue. So how about that? And then they called me a facilitator that I should have known. It's like, hang on, you guys knew from day one, and you tell me that I'm a facilitator? Oh man, they're priceless, I tell you. How they get away with stuff like this is just unbelievable. They can just never admit the truth. That is the problem. I offered to take a polygraph. Hey, ship me full of sodium pentanol. I got nothing to hide. Let's go for it. Yeah, let's just keep him in solitary and keep him quiet and deny him a trial, deny him media coverage, and we'll make him out to be the bad guy. And then we can go pat ourselves on the back and, oh, look, we're so good. We need more funding now, because at that time, they were about to lose some of their funding, the ATF. So if you watch that movie, Waco, they actually mentioned that on that TV series on Netflix.
Our mutual friend, Vicky, told Don and me that really both of you more or less just got into the business of selling guns because you're just enthusiasts, because you just enjoyed having them, purchasing them, and that for both of you to be dealers, it was just kind of a natural outgrowth from that.
We were on the gun range every day. We trained. I trained with another company, OSTS. I trained security guards to have their commissioned security license. I would take a female who had never shot a firearm in her life and train her to shoot with better than most of the men that were in her squad. When I was done with her, it was like a blank slate, and I'm Picasso. This is my art. This is my life. This is what I do. So every paycheck, sitting on big oil field money, big savings accounts and stuff like that, and every paycheck was for guns and ammo. I didn't have to work. I was doing so well in business, I didn't have to have a 9-to-5. My 9-to-5 was to buy more guns. It was just, an enthusiasm, a pride, and really, I was going to get my FFL license but there was, when I spoke to an attorney and I told him, I said, I'm buying and selling a lot of guns. Do I need an FFL? He said, no. He said, you don't. He said, make sure that your gun sales never exceeds your income. So just as long as that's okay, you're not making more money from the sale of guns, you don't need an FFL. So I made sure to never exceed my income.
you'd have these so-called private collectors, 300 guns on their table, buying and selling. I'm like, well, how come they can do that? And the ATF's like, well, that's legal. Like, okay, that's what my guys wanted to do from the Columbus, New Mexico government officials. They asked me, can we buy, sell, trade? And I'd already checked with the ATF, and they said, yeah, that's legal. And I complained to the ATF, and if that's the way it is, that's the way it is.
It is. There's also no time limit. So if I went with a buddy of mine, and he sees an M4 and he buys it, and he accidentally spent, the wife gets mad, or he spent his rent money buying a gun when he shouldn't have, I can turn around and buy it right then and there from him.
This is just the way it looks to me, okay? They let you guys operate in these gray areas because there might come a time when that might be useful to put somebody up front and say, oh, here's the bad man. We knew we could find the bad man. Here he is.
There was one incident. I mean, during my career with the FFL license, you get all kinds of people trying to do this and do that. It's like, no, you can't do that. I mean, you need a proper identification and all that. And I had one guy call me over and over. He wants to come around and buy 2 rifles. I'm like, yeah, fine, come around. And he called me something like 75 times in one day. So anyway, he turns up, and I give him the paperwork, and he gives me a license face down and says, I'm going to fill it out in the car. Before I could say anything, he's out the door. I look at the license. It's expired license from an Asian guy, and this guy is Mexican. I'm like, oh, God, what is this guy, a clown? So he comes back in. I said, dude, this is not you. I need proper identification. And then suddenly he pulls out $3,000 in cash. What about if I give you $3,000 for undocumented firearms? I'm like, no, you can't do that. I mean, you'll get in trouble, I'll get in trouble. It's not the way things are done. So finally he leaves, and I'm stunned. And I call my buddy at the gun shop who I work with and said, man, what should I do? He goes, call the police. So I called the police. Now, living in Chaparral, you're out in the sticks in the middle of nowhere, and it is New Mexico. So El Paso doesn't respond unless it's real critical. And I had 4 Chaparral sheriffs in my house within like 2 minutes of the call. So I think that was a setup, but I can't prove it. But whatever. I got better things to do with my time than worry about nonsense like that. So anyway, I gave him the report and all that, and I said, yeah, thank you and all that. And next minute, I go to a gun show. This guy turns up again trying to buy firearms. So I called the ATF. First I went to El Paso Police, and they wouldn't help me. And then I called the ATF and said, hey, this guy that's been trying to bribe me is here now trying to buy firearms. And they sent about 7 ATF agents to the show that introduced themselves to me to help. And I pointed the guy out, and they watched him. The guy walked out the door, and they followed him. Anyway, the lead agent came back and said, talk to me. Can we talk to you? I said, yeah. And I told him the story about what happened with the 75 calls and the sheriff turning up. And I said, anyway, you got the guy in the parking lot? No, we lost him. I'm kind of thinking, boy, 7 agents, and you lose the guy. The parking lot's only the size probably of a regular house block. That's kind of weird, but whatever, here we go again. So anyway, I let that go. And about 3 weeks later, I'm working in El Paso at my buddy's gun shop. And guess who walks in? The same guy who tried to bribe me. I guess he didn't know I worked there. So he didn't buy anything, but he walked out. And then I had these 2 other agents come around one day asking questions about one of my customers. And I only got their first names. That's one thing about them. They will not give you ID. But this was Greg and Josh out of the El Paso office. And they're talking about some guy. I'm like, yeah, fine. And I finally said, what happened to the guy Leo that I helped you get? And they basically ignored me like they didn't hear me. So I said again, I said, what happened to the guy Leo? Oh, we got him, and it led to something bigger, and we can't talk about it. I said, you lying SOBs. He walked into the shop 2 days ago. You know, if you want me to help you, I'll help you. Stop your lying, you know. I've gone to every effort I can to help you guys. You know, frightened of reprisals from this guy if he knows, you know, I turned him in or anything like that. And here you are lying to me, you know. It's like, and you start to get this distrust in your mouth, you know, this bad taste about, well, you know, you try and help these people and look what they do to you.
Ian, I really appreciate the suffering you've been through here too. I've listened to you probably a little more than Brian just by chance, and the story has just been I can't make sense out of it. I don't know what the government was trying to do. But let me ask you first. I just have two quick questions. Is how long ago was that interaction with Judicial Watch?
6 months ago.
Have they followed up since then with anything on the outer facing, you know, on their channel or anything that we can see yet?
Oh, nothing else. And there was an organization,
Gold Institute.
Yes, you're correct. They were going to do something, but we haven't heard back from them yet either. So we're trying. We went to the senator from Texas. He was out that day, but we spoke to his aide, and there's like 2 or 3 others in the same situation as Brian. We're calling ourselves the victims of Fast and Furious. And of course, unfortunately, I've been writing trying to get my rights back, but you know, I don't have Kim Kardashian behind me, unfortunately. So,
well, one thing is, when I was immediately released because the government lied and they got caught, and that's documented, of course, that's how I got released, immediately released. I tried to go after the attorney, the public defender, and apparently he's immune. And I wrote to the bar, I'm like, you cost me my house. I mean, how did he miss this? And, you know, they just said, well, you know, people make mistakes. I'm like, people make mistakes? That's a 20-year trial attorney. You know, but then again, he is getting paid by the government. Yeah, and the judge, he just lapped it up, you know, at the arraignment. He's asking the prosecutor, and can you prove these charges? And the prosecutor stands up. Oh, yes, sir, Judge. What was that? Kangaroo court? What was the judge going to say? What was the prosecutor going to say? Well, no, Judge, let me think about it a minute. Oh, God, this is so pathetic. You know, and then a real attorney jumps in to help me, like I said, and saw all the mistakes. And here's the thing. Not only my attorney made the mistake, 7 other public defenders made the same mistake. How was that possible? And I'm not just talking about mistake. It's mistakes plural. That's how I was immediately released. I mean, the prosecutor's immune, the judge is immune, the public defender is immune, and, oh, well, you lost your house, just too bad, you know, things happen like that. That's what the state bar says. So the whole thing is just one big joke. They don't want to hear about it, and that judge gets up there and calls me a facilitator, and there's a war going on. Yeah, that your own government promoted, pal. You know, open your damn eyes and stop being so blind towards everybody else who's dragged into court before you. You know, wake up to what's going on. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
Was it a federal judge?
Yeah, Robert Brack.
Yeah, both. Yeah, they're both federal cases.
Now, Ian, what do you think they were trying to extract? Were they trying to extract a false confession, false testimony, or were they trying to silence you as a witness, or what do you think they were motivated? What behavior were they looking to extract?
Okay, a lot of people have asked, why do you think they picked on you? Why did they do this to you? Well, the answer is pretty simple. Look what happened in Arizona. Thousands of guns gone, a lot of dead Mexicans, 1 dead Border Patrol officer, and a couple of hours down the road, more guns gone. I mean, if the media come to me and said, hey, what's the deal? Who's been buying from you? I'm like, well, it's the police chief and the mayor of the city of Columbus, New Mexico. Well, how long were they buying from you? I'm like, well, a year. Well, were you notifying the ATF and that? I'm like, well, yeah, of course. Here's the paperwork with all the background checks. The media would have had a heyday. I mean, they just would have dug themselves a deeper hole. But no, let's do this raid and keep him quiet and deny him his rights, pat ourselves on the back, make him be the bad guy. And look what happens. You can't get justice unless you've got millions and millions of dollars. They'll freeze your assets. They'll take your property. I mean, I lost my house. I lost 75 animals that were all my pet, birds and goats. They were all my pets, dead because of the ATF. Because I'm a danger to society. That's why I was denied bail. I'm like, what a joke. I'm a danger. I was doing my paperwork and notifying you guys, and you guys did nothing. So maybe you ought to look in the mirror next time you start saying crap like that to people. But then, of course, we are looking at it and talking about the ATF. So what can I say?
Well, and let me set the timing on all of this too. And I look at what happened to the American sniper from Odessa, Texas.
Mhm.
Okay, and I ran a gun range all the time. I was a certified range instructor. And there was a text message. His wife came out, Taya, or I think is her name. But his wife came out and said there was a text message that says, "Hey, keep an eye on this guy. He's kind of a loony bin."
Mhm.
And you're armed on a gun range, and you are expecting somebody to go postal. If they do, you take them out. If they're when you're a range instructor, you tell them, "Hey, look, this is like a death ray. Don't point it at anything that you don't intend to shoot." And you're establishing all of these ground rules for your range and safety. Okay, so how are two Navy SEALs out on a gun range? How are they gunned down and shot in the back? I have no idea. I think he was taken out. So, but what's happening was he started up a contracting company. Okay, we were contractors for the DOD through a company called Titlik Management Incorporated. We went on to work for several. I went on to work for several other contracting companies, DOD and State Department, with the Armor Group, and then went to the Border Patrol and stuff like that. So I think what they were really trying to do was control. They realized the deadliest sniper in America was going to become a civilian. And he had just spoken 30 days before he was killed at that range. He had just spoken against Obama on his gun control.
Where was he deployed? Iraq or what theater?
I'm sorry?
The Ranger. Yeah, I remember the story. Where was he deployed though during his active duty?
Oh, he was all over.
Was he in Afghanistan?
Yeah. OEF,
Okay.
OIF, and EF.
Well, can I ask you the same question then, Brian? Is what were they focusing on? What were they trying to? Because obviously they were punishing you, but what were they trying to extract? What was again?
The American government was trying to prove that American guns show up in Mexico, particularly. They went after Academy Sporting Goods, who have their sporting goods store. They have locations in El Paso. Bass Pro Shop wasn't as big as it was. Cabela's wasn't as big as it was. But they went after all of these gun stores all around the borders, and all they could do was slap them on the wrist and say, "Hey, don't sell high-powered rifles." Okay, so all of a sudden you saw your Wasser 10, semi-automatic AK type firearm, and your M4s were taken off of the shelves at all of the gun shops that were within the vicinity of the border. And so their objective was to prove, first of all, to stomp on the Second Amendment, okay, and by proving and creating the sob story that American guns are transported to Mexico and then they're used in crimes in Mexico. So they thought that they were going to be
I was
themselves
hoping
on the
somebody
back.
would either one of you could figure it out, because I'm sure you were trying to figure out why this was happening to both of you, really. And so
you can't take down a corporation like Cabela's, like Bass Pro, anybody that has a rifle counter, right? You can't take them down. They're a corporation. So who are you going to incarcerate? Well, wait a minute. We can go after private, federal firearms licensed dealers who are individuals, don't have the money, don't have the corporate attorneys. So they made it into this big dog and pony show, came after us. And then and that's what Fast and Furious. I know that there's been murders. I know, and I'm not saying that we're in any way, shape, or form even in the same league as the Border Patrol agents that were killed and the Mexicans that have lost their lives over this. But what people are not realizing was that the American citizen suffered at the hands of the government to push their agenda.
And particularly, Brian, when you were talking before, I wanted to say this, that you guys are basically single-handedly, out of just the way your hearts are made, the way that you relate to people that want to learn about firearms and protect themselves and their families. You're rebuilding American gun culture that's basically in many ways almost in the waste bin. It's almost been thrown out. And there you are single-handedly rebuilding the American gun culture ethic of self-defense and empowering individual people. And that is a powerful thing, actually way more powerful than the corporations that are the ones that, most of the guns are sold through. So if it weren't for guys like you, I think it would, the whole America relationship with guns would be much more subject to all of the regulations they want to shove down the throats and that the corporations would comply with. But when it gets down to the grassroots level and you guys are one-on-one relating to people and meeting their needs and just what you were doing, it's powerful. And that's why you were targeted, I think. And that's just one facet of it. But that's what made you a target.
Being a concealed handgun license holder as well, brandishing my weapon. I fooled a lady getting her purse stolen at a Walmart, and the media came after me and said, "Oh, we want to interview you when I'm shopping in the Walmart with my girlfriend." And I said, "No, I just did what any American should do. I chased down a guy in the parking lot. When he got aggressive, I pulled my weapon on him and called it in right away. I think I still remember my concealed handgun license number, 14729-214. And so, hey, this is, Brian Connell. I've got a guy at gunpoint. Boom, put him on speaker and know it, and teaching people how to get out of. If you do shoot somebody, you're going to go to jail. Okay, but you're not going to stay in jail because it's going to be a justified shoot. You're protecting others, you're protecting property, you're, avoiding grievous bodily harm, and you escalated that force continuum triangle up quickly, and stop the threat. So, we were advocates for that. And still to this day, I encourage everybody to go and get their concealed handgun. It's needed. The police are reactionary, not proactive.
Have either of you been following the reaction of Mexico lately to?
Yes.
When I first got out, I approached the Mexican consul in El Paso, and of course the government here tried to stop me. And I was so surprised. I'm like, really? You tried to stop me talking to the Mexican Attorney General's office? And I gave him my story. I don't know where it went. And last I heard, it was going to be translated into Spanish down in Mexico City, but I never heard back from him. I lost contact with the guy. And just recently I was contacted by a Mexican reporter that's doing a story now because the Mexican president, the former Mexican president, is claiming that he had no knowledge or was giving any information. And the reporter said, well, you gave the guys your information back then. Either he didn't get it or he did get it and he's not doing anything about it. So I don't know if he had his hand in the cookie jar or what. But this reporter, he took all my story about 2 weeks ago, and I haven't heard back from him. I'll probably give him a call shortly. And he's like, well, we need proof of this and proof of that. And I'm like, well, you're not going to get proof. I mean, the ATF's not going to write you a letter and say, yeah, we told this guy to keep selling. Of course, it is what it is. It did happen. There was a congressional report. They admitted sending firearms to Mexico. You got thousands of firearms turning up there, thousands of dead people. So I don't know what more you want, but we're in the process of, talking to Mexico and seeing what information we can give them, since the current president wants information. Well, that's further along in the story. We'll see how that goes, and we'll keep you updated on that, of course.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons we're seeing so much bandwidth filling from these other stories is, we have had a lot to deal with here in the U.S. and I think they're actually doing that on purpose to crowd out the bandwidth of the media, which has a little more of a lever on the politicians. But, the stated purpose of this Fast and Furious mission, or whatever it was an operation, I guess, was to catch, ostensibly to catch Mexican drug lords. I think, have either of you gentlemen heard that explanation before? And it doesn't make much.
Movie right now on Waco on Netflix, dude. They lie their asses off.
Oh yeah, we're actually you bore the brunt of this. Both of you did. But we're very used to the lying. The lying has been we got some of it too with our work with Dr. Corsi and 50 other people, went through the Mueller probe, and they had Rosenstein on today. Different topic, but you can see that they're definitely afraid of something, and I think they're afraid of this. I think it's this. This story is one of the most significant. It went on since the Bush administration in a larger framework, letting guns walk. That concept, and it just makes no sense because they didn't. There's also a huge death toll in Mexico, and if Mexico didn't know, this is the question the president of Mexico has now. If the attorney general at that time, whether he knew or not, neither answer is good, because it would be illegal if he did know, and if he didn't know, then it would be a violation of sovereignty.
Brian Connell and myself, we worked together for a contractor for the Army. They employed us because we were ex-special forces, and I had a lot of counter-terrorist training in Asia and Vietnam in the early 80s, believe it or not. And we were there, and stuff was going out the back door, and it was like a conveyor belt to Mexico. And people would make a lot of money selling ammunition and night vision goggles and stuff like that. If you get caught, of course, consequences are too bad, but I guess some people thought different than that. And I tried to tell them, and they just weren't interested. I mean, I guess they have a one-track mind, can I handle one thing at a time? So that's the ATF I'm talking about. So
you knew each other before, but you didn't know that you were both basically entrapped in the same thing until afterwards. Is that correct?
When Ian went down, I went to his court hearings and was there to show support and write letters of, to the judge and everything. And my father said to me at one point, he said, "Hey, be careful, because Ian went down," and and I said, No, I think Ian's just really kind of got a bad deal, and maybe he just, I didn't know what happened, but I said, if they ever asked me, hey, we need to see your paperwork or anything like that, I'll just tell them, no, you don't. And it wasn't but, I don't know, 6 months later or so, I was arrested, and they brought the cavalry for me. And
Doug and Pony show.
Yep.
Brian, do you think that they went after you because you were supporting Ian? Do you think that I think that the reason they went after both of you was because they knew that you were smart guys, and they realized that you were going to figure out what they were doing, and they wanted to neutralize you by just sending you to jail, and if they could, by killing you. Like, what did they stand to gain from sending either of you or both of you to jail? I just think they just wanted to hush you. They just wanted to silence you. One of the only ways I can make sense of what happened to you, Brian, and you, Ian, is that they they knew that you were eventually going to see through the ruse and potentially might cause trouble for them. And I think a real central part of that, my theory, is based on what happened to you with the purchaser who used the fake ID. Could you tell that story?
This is a priceless incident. I mean, how this happened is beyond me. The guy had a printed out DMV ID, which is fine. He filled out the background check form and passed. Well, 2 weeks later, the check bounced. So I went to the address on the check. It's non-existent. So, well, I've been had. And I'm thinking, but, he passed the background check. How did that happen? So I go home and start looking on the form and all this. And no one would help me. I went to the El Paso PD, no help. I went to the ATF, no help. I went down to the Department of Public Safety, and the trooper came out to help me. And lo and behold, Officer Diego, one of my customers. So we talked about it and all this. And we're looking at the forms. I said, this guy passed the background check. I don't know how he did that. Then Officer Diego brings a photo of the real guy who's this license belonged to, which is a white guy. The guy who had the fake ID that stole 2 rifles is a black guy. When you call in one of the things on the background check form, it's race. When I said black, how does that not red flag in the Nix background check center? I mean, everything else was the same as the white guy. DOB, name, social. So everything had to match. So he says he's going to, handwrite samples. He's going to try and get onto it and look into it. Well, suddenly then 2 agents turn up from the ATF, and they're all interested now after I've been going around for months trying to find this guy on my own. And they're interviewing me and carrying on. And, well, you called the background check in as white so he would pass. I'm like, how do you explain that when it's all recorded at the Nix background check center? Just go play the recording. See, there's another lie that just put total distrust in my mind about these guys. They know it's recorded. Why would you even say that? So anyway, went round and round, didn't go anywhere. A couple of weeks later, I get a phone call in the middle of the night. They say, hey, man, I'm not supposed to call you, but I've been told to drop the investigation. I can't say nothing more. It was Diego. They told him to drop the case. I'm like, what's going on? So there was a guy I worked with for 11 years in law enforcement, and he calls me one day from Chaparral and says, hey, did you lose 2 rifles, fake ID, black guy? I'm like, yeah. How did you know this? Because I didn't tell nobody because I was kind of embarrassed. He says, the guy is at my neighbor's house right now. They're talking about it. I can hear him. I'm like, wow. And I couldn't get there because I was in El Paso. This was in Chaparral. And my buddy, he got the guy's real name, a photo of him, the license plate number, which I still have to date, and his name and everything. And I go, got this guy, great. So I went down to the ATF. They're like, yeah, great. We'll take care of it. We'll get him. Nothing. And my buddy calls me and says, have you heard anything? I said, no. They said they're going to talk to you too, but they never called. Well, come to find out, after some more investigation by my friend, the guy's a confidential informant for the Marshal's Department, sorry. So there you go. Talk about corruption as deep as it goes. I mean, it's just amazing, the stuff that's going on. And by the way, this has been all vetted by Judicial Watch, by Chris Farley. Our group, Victims of Fast and Furious, there's about 4 of us this happened to. And we went to Washington, D.C. They heard our story. We gave them our documents, and they vetted the whole lot. They said, yeah, this is all, checks out. Everything's true. So why is there no investigation? Why is nobody held accountable? I mean, I lost my rights, and I was incarcerated for 2 years and 8 months. And then when a real attorney stepped in, because I was denied a trial, a U.S. citizen was denied a trial. Let that sink in for a moment. So he jumps in to help me and says, no, this is all wrong. They're lying. And he proved it. And on December 13th, Friday the 13th, I thought I was really screwed on that date. I go to court. and I walked out of court free. Still on probation, though, because they're priceless. They can't have the audacity to say, well, yeah, we did lie. Here's your rights back, which any normal person would probably do, but not the government of that time. I mean, the DOJ under Obama and Holder is absolutely priceless. You know, they got caught red-handed. And do I get my rights back? No, but we're trying right now. You know, I approach President Trump. I know he's got a million things on his plate, but this is not right, you know, and unfortunately, I don't have Kim Kardashian behind me to write to him for a pardon or anything. It's just I'm one man out of, 325 million people in the United States? I mean, it's not right. I want my rights back. That's what I want, you know, and I deserve my rights back the same as everybody else in the group who was mistreated and lied to and used as nothing more than a scapegoat. And the government's own documents prove it beyond a doubt. And Judicial Watch proved it. So why is this being heard? Why is this going up the chain of command to the president?
Yeah, the mindset of you guys is so completely different from that of the, I'm sad to say, most average Americans will, that have a business, or, you know, they'll do whatever the regulations require, trusting that the regulations, the checks that are being done in the name of accountability and good government are being done in good faith. Well, you know, you have a pair of eyes, Ian, that prove to you that wasn't the case. And you weren't going to say, oh, I'm not going to believe my eyes. I'm going to believe the people that are telling me that everything is okay. And if you had fallen into their trap, because I do think it was a trap, then they would have been able to come back and say, you know what, you made this horrible mistake, Ian, and and then they would deny that they cleared it, and then they would have something on you. They'd say, look, if you want to keep your license and you want to continue to do what you're doing, you better do this for us or that for us, and then they own you. This is the mafia in government form.
Randy Weaver. In my case, what do you think that a police chief drives up in a police car and the mayor, the trustee, in another police car? I mean, well, they are who they are.
That's one thing I still can't work out. Why, police chiefs wouldn't know, they wouldn't be traced. And I know I've said it before and I'll say it again. It's like, it don't make sense. I mean, what were they thinking? What was their story? What was going to be their comeback? If the ATF turned up and said, hey, you bought 5 Wausau 10s, they turned up in Mexico. Can you explain that? I mean, what was the police chief going to do? And if you read some of the paperwork I had, the police officer and the trustee, the police chief would give him the police car to drive over here and buy, and he was stopped several times. They were following them, and one instant they took 10 of the pistols I'd sold them, and the police chief vouched for him, and he was all upset, and he told me, look, I'm getting them back. And I said, well, yeah, if you haven't done anything wrong, you'll get them back, of course. So, I don't know, that whole episode there, what they were thinking is just a mystery to me. I have no idea what they were thinking. I mean, like I said, why would you make a paper trail? Why would I rob a bank with a ski mask and as leaving, take it off and look at the camera? It doesn't make sense. So I don't know what the deal is with them. Maybe one day someone can interview them and find out what the truth was. What were they thinking?
Well, that's the thing too. I mean, do you prosecute Home Depot for selling Timothy McVeigh fertilizer?
Yeah.
Once you leave the store, once you leave my house, once you leave, once that gun is turned over at this exact time, and I would take photocopies of your ID to do a private sale, to do your ID, my ID, the gun serial number, the exact date. This is the time that it is leaving my possession, this firearm, and it is now sold. You didn't even have to do that. That's not a requirement to do. I would do that just because I was smart. Somebody come knock and I'd say, oh, here you go. This is your man that you're looking for. This is the last known place that I know the gun's at. I sold it to this guy. Okay, so, and that's not required by law, but I would still do it. And then and they didn't want to hear that at the federal level. Well, from what I look at it, my take on it is, in El Paso, there was several gun store owners. There was a guy that ran Alamo Shooter Supply, and they took him down. And the word on the street was that he got in trouble for selling the Glock corner shot. He said, and I think that was a camera mounted, 90-degree angle, shoot from, the other side of the wall, corner shot. And so that was the word on the street, was that he went down for that. And then a guy by the name of Hector, who was a good friend of mine and Ian's as well, had a shop called Uniforms of Texas, and he went down for selling vests to Mexican, bulletproof vests to Mexican with in official capacity.
Purchase too.
Yeah, and Alamo Shooter and Hector at Uniforms of Texas, they both had the proper licenses to produce, Mexican flags and do the uniforms of these guys. Okay, and then Ian goes down, right around that same time. And from what I know, when I showed up in Odessa, I went to go punch oil wells, and this was I had an injury when I was in the Border Patrol, and so I ended up leaving the Border Patrol, and then I agreed with the Border Patrol that I would come back after my foot had healed, and in order for me to be a line agent, I was going to have to go retread through the academy. And I said, yeah, okay, that's fine. But I'd been in a boot for about 10 months with a busted foot. And so I went, that was my main motivation to go out to the oil fields, was to take the toughest job in America and whip myself back into shape. And then I would go back to being a Border Patrol agent. And it was actually that at that time, the Border Patrol called me. I'm already in Odessa. I've been there, I'd say 6 months. I'm making incredible, oil field money. And they make me an offer. I said, no, thanks. I make a lot more money. And then it was Agent Joshua Johnson out of El Paso that I run into him in Dallas, Texas, and he's got his whole posse with him. And they said, we know about the guns that you've been selling. And I think the issue is that we spoke to them, to the ATF, and all parties involved, because a patriotic American who is not breaking the law is going to cooperate. And so we provided them with everything, and then they turn around and stick the cooperation that we did. They build a case and stick it to us. I don't know what the motive is and why we had targets on our backs. I would just say, us in particular, but I would say that they were stomping under the Obama administration and Eric Holder. They were stomping out, or attempting to stomp out, the Second Amendment rights by showing that American guns show up in crime scenes. And that was their narrative. That was their agenda. And they would stop at nothing to get that done. Now, going back to the Department of Injustice, actually any American, and this is what Cindy and I talked about the other night, was any American that faces a federal indictment, their motives, their tactics have been working for years, and they will get you behind bars. There's no way, shape, or form that you can, defend yourself. And then it becomes so bad. And, the Michael Flynn case, it becomes so bad, the prosecution, that, that they're stopping at nothing to put you behind bars. They succeed every time. In my case, they had all of my assets seized, or actually frozen, and then seized. So, I'm walking into a courtroom with a public defender who's not going to raise a big stink because he's got a golf game, Thursday, 10 a.m. with the judge and the prosecutor, So it's this corrupt system that, as law-abiding American citizens, when you look at it, you say, normal citizens would say, well, first of all, the government doesn't do bad things to its people. And then second of all, I would never be caught up in that situation. And the scary thing is a lot of people are caught up in that situation and you go down every single time. There's no defense.
This, the Hector guy, and I forget the other name that one of you mentioned, were they also badly treated when they were in jail? Were they put in solitary and all that like the two of you were?
There was the Reese family in Deming, New Mexico. They went after him and ruined his life also. But he was able to get the attorney, a real attorney, even though they froze his account, took all his money. The town came together and donated a big sum of money so he could get an attorney called Jason Bowles. That was supposed to be my attorney, but apparently no one knew I was supposed to make that call. And then he got off on nearly all the charges. 2 minor charges, I don't know, something like dotting an I or crossing a T, something immaterial, really. And he got most of his stuff back, not the firearms, but the property, the money, and he won't talk about it. But I believe he got his money back and everything back on a gag order. You don't talk about it, we'll give you it all back. So I guess there's some agreement there. So I've been hearing in back channels, but that's too bad because what they did to him was unbelievable. It was worse than anybody. I mean, this guy was a great guy.
So how is it that you ended up with a public defender? Were you not able to hire an attorney because everything that you had of value was confiscated?
Correct. I mean, not that I had a great deal of money in the first place. What money I did have left, my ex-wife at the time was using that to pay the house, trying to save our house, which we ended up losing anyway. I mean, I lost my retirement, my house, all my possessions, everything. Public defenders getting paid by the federal government. I mean, like I said, not only him, 7 others all made the same mistakes. How is that possible? Didn't they check anything? And I've got the paperwork to prove that. The government admitted it. So what were they doing? I want that question answered. That guy owes me a house.
The judge called me a menace to society. And, when I was in the oil field and I saw like my neighbor changing his brakes or something on his truck, I would go up to it, hey, you want a hand? Or I'll tell you what, I've got every tool you can imagine in the back of my truck. I'm going to leave my toolboxes open and you just grab what you need and be sure I'm leaving at 5 a.m. So be sure that you put all my tools back. Menace to society? Are you kidding me? Does a menace do that to people?
We don't want people fixing things and helping each other. No. That's horrible.
Yeah. Does a menace go down the road and mow the lawn for the elderly? No. I was shocked when they called me a menace to society.
Honestly, I think some of these guys, not all of them, but the judges or whatever that it would say things like that, they might genuinely believe it, that if somebody is involved in selling weapons, they think guns are so bad, they think anybody that sells guns is bad, and they really think that they're working to build a world of peace by eliminating guns. And people get these twisted mindsets and they believe them, and I don't even know a way to get through to a person like that. And
then now what I'm doing is I'm going to purchase 99 acres and I'm building an entire conglomerate, and building an industrial park here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Like you tell me who's a menace to society.
Yeah, and that's great that you're not letting it their black mark stop you, because there's all kinds of ways to do good things and to bring progress in all kinds of areas around the world without, you can go around the little blemish they put on you.
Well, here's the thing. I was making a lot of money. Okay. I probably didn't need to be selling guns because I made an incredible income, in the oil field. But I did. I was always out there, making more. and there's nothing wrong with that. And I created companies in Texas. So for me, it was just a speed bump, and and I'm back, and I'm going to be bigger because that's my big middle finger to them.
Yeah.
You can't shut this down. You can't break me. You cannot. You can throw me in solitary confinement for 4.5 months. I'm not going to break. And I'm gonna sit there and smile at the guard and say good morning, every time he walks by.
They just gave you a little vacation.
That brochure on the gated community really turned me on. Yeah. I actually became a legal guru, and I ran the legal department. The law library.
Oh yeah, when they finally let me out, I went for what's called a resentencing under a 2255. It proved there was something wrong. And the judge says, well, how did you find this out? I said, well, the attorney found it. I didn't want to speak to the asshole. So, and I put on a big, I'm sorry, I want to be a productive member of society, garbage, and all this shit. I'm sorry to be pissed, but I played down and instead of saying, oh, I'm innocent, you should know that. I admitted everything and tried to sound remorseful, and I got immediately released, and then come to find out I have 28 days credit for next time. I'm like, oh, great. Can I roll that over or catch that out? What a joke. The Bureau of Prisons did everything they could to delay me sending me back. Everything they could up there in Yankton, South Dakota. Instead of putting me on a bus, they had to wait to get transported, and I got transported by 2 marshals, and one turned up, and the first thing I said is, don't I know you? He goes, yeah, I used to buy from you. I'm like, I remember you. And then he knew. But they're all too scared. They don't want to say nothing because look what happened to John Dodson. He came forward. Almost went to prison. They tried to ban his book. And he's still getting screwed around today. Transfer after transfer after transfer. He's the only guy that really came forward and blew the whistle on what was going on, what that agency was doing. And look what they're trying to do to him. There was another agent, a retired agent, that came forward in my defense in the end. And he said, what they're saying here on the report is just garbage. They've got you selling machine guns and all this crap. These are legal firearms that you bought from a wholesaler. So they got caught on that lie also. It's just amazing. I've got that paperwork, and it clearly states, whoever wrote this has no idea what they're talking about. But the judge reads it. Oh, wow, bad guy, facilitator. So it's unfortunate.
It's completely broken and it needs an overhaul.
Yeah. Once they drag you in there in chains and orange jumpsuit. Oh, you're guilty. You must be guilty straight away. Yeah.
Well, they throw up so many diversions, and now this, the George Floyd issue. I'm certainly not advocating for what was done, but he was he was involved in a lot of nefarious activities, according to a lot of reports, and so. It's not that I'm sad he was maybe unjustly killed. We can see that from watching the film.
I know that he was not on his trach. He did not. And then if you look closely and zoom in, you can see that the officer had one knee on the asphalt. And yes, he was detaining the guy. But and he said, "I can't breathe." He yelled out, "I can't breathe," 12 times. You're breathing if you're talking. That's what they told us in the military. That's what they told us in the U.S. Border Patrol when they had us doggy pile, when they had 4 instructors piled on top of us, and we said, "I can't breathe." You're talking, aren't you? When we're so winded from running miles, at academy training, you say, "I'm tired. I can't breathe." You're talking, aren't you? That's what they would tell us.
With George Floyd, one minute they're walking him to the sidewalk. next minute they're on top of him. I mean, where's that part in between there? Did he resist? And I don't know if he fully had the knee, all that pressure, or he was just balancing. Because there was one time we would do that to people when we hook them up, because they would start banging their heads into the ground and claiming police brutality.
Yeah, there's some strange things that are coming out about that.
Yeah.
They were co-workers for 18 years. The one I heard today is that the Minnesota Attorney General holding up the Antifa book, and now they've upped the charges, but he will get off. The toxicology report had two, yeah, right. So, that's going to start another round of riots. They all came from the same geographical area, so it's just, we're going to be weaving this one together. But let me go back to, I just want to give you some breaking news here. I usually do this when we're doing a show, is I'll scan to see if anything new comes up. But there's a headline that just came across, and maybe this is old information. Maybe you knew this all along. But the headline is, Felipe Calderon's administration had ties to drug cartels, and the United States knew all along.
God, I'm shocked.
Right. So we knew that, but here it is. Okay, the reason I brought this up, I don't know if either of you gentlemen are involved in alternative media, and you don't necessarily need to be, but if you want to get the story out, what I would suggest, and I just posted this one on our Twitter, is to contact the person who wrote this story. His name is Kurt Hackbarth. I don't know who he is, but this is how alternative media works, is people like this will take an interest in a lot of these stories because they're constantly looking for, they're looking for something to put out there. And a lot of times they will go after stories that are a little bit out of fashion. And I hate to say it this way, but the Fast and Furious has lost some of its punch, in the media, because they've heard that, I heard about Fast and Furious, and they switch off. But if you start stirring up some interest, because now it's coming back, and the reason it's coming back is Obamagate is building up. All of a sudden, they're realizing that these guys, and I mean the Attorney General under Obama, Eric, name's
Holder.
There you go. Is the two of them were the Bobbsey twins of corruption, and this story right here, this is the center. This is ground zero for that, and I think just from what I'm, all the other stories we could possibly look at, this is sort of what they were trying to cover up, was a mass corruption involving Mexico, and possibly, I believe, just from looking at this thing for a few years, on the side, is that they were trying to establish a monopoly, a drug gang to monopolize and organize the Mexican drug trade. And also, Mexico doesn't have much of a firearms industry. So in order to do that, they would need to import, they would need to get some firepower over the border. So they're function stacking. They're also demonizing the domestic Second Amendment trade by framing you, both of you, in various ways, and somehow there was another end to this transaction. And we've looked at this before in other contexts, that the U.S. was involved in the black budget, needing to finance that black budget through the sale of narcotics, and we had that happening with Iran-Contra, and so the concept is not that exotic at this point. But trying to stitch all these pieces together, gentlemen, what do you think of? I mean, what explanation do you come up with to account for this? Because the transaction had to have another end to it.
I don't know where this is going or where it's going to end.
One of our guys is doing the rallies, and he actually got to speak to President Trump briefly about Brian Terry and the victims of Fast and Furious. And President Trump said, "Yeah, I'm aware of it. I'm looking into it. I'm not going to let it go." But on the other hand, what was he going to say? No, I haven't got time for this. And of course, he's going to say, "I'm going to look into it" and all that. But like I said, he has a million things on his plate to do. But this is pretty important. I mean, you're talking about a lot of dead people, and it's going to continue. There's a lot of guns down there, and the cartel has been taking on federal police. To take on, say, a drug house rehabilitation center and kill 16 unarmed people is one thing, But when you come up on 10 federal police officers all armed and you take them on and kill every one of them, that's something else, because there's a lot of training involved in that. I mean, not just to walk up and go bang, bang, bang. There's a lot of training to start engaging people with firearms. I mean, because they shoot back. So we'll see where that goes. I mean, it's going to be a never-ending story for a long, long time. I mean, and now there's reports of these firearms turning up in South America and overseas. So that doesn't surprise me one bit. I mean, the past history of the government back then, the CIA, Air America, Nicaragua, the Contras, I mean, who knows what's going on. But our group, the Victims of Fast and Furious, we want some type of justice here. We need help. You know, what's going on?
Well, Don probably would say that he already has.
Yeah, I think this is all a master plan that's playing out exactly as designed, and that that Fast and Furious is coming back into focus because it's finally time for all those pieces to, all those cards to be put back on the table so people see what it was all about. And we got a front row seat. I think that's pretty cool.
Warm thanks to our guests, Ian Garland and Brian Connell. We will be praying for your vindication and complete exoneration. To our listeners, thanks for joining us. We hope that you have enjoyed this episode of Poli-Psych Podcast. If you have, we ask that you please click like, share this video, subscribe to us on YouTube, subscribe to us on BitChute, follow us on Twitter, and if you have a moment, visit our website. Once again, thanks for joining us, and until next time, take care.